Hello and welcome. In this video, we are going to take another look at our file transfer protocol or FTP server on our CentOS installation. This video is part of a larger series of videos that focuses on our Oracle VM VirtualBox Manager, as well as using CentOS for purposes of demonstrating networking. So to begin with, in this video, we're going to go ahead and log in with an account that has sudo permissions, but not root. Technically speaking, for this particular demonstration, we really aren't going to need sudo permissions other than for the purposes of installing our FTP client. If it has already been installed, then you should be fine. What we're going to do is we're going to test our FTP client against our FTP server, and we're going to sort of see some of the additional configuration changes that we need to make. And we won't be making those changes in this video. We're just going to be discussing then how we are actually going to be connecting. And so what we want to do is we want to go ahead and first check to make sure that our vsftp server is actually running. The easiest way to go about doing that is to go ahead and run our sudo systemctl command, and we're going to look at the status of the vsftpd service. Now, again, once you've gotten your service set up and you're confident that it's running, technically speaking, we won't need to be making these changes anymore. But again, we're still in the sort of this preliminary phase of trying to understand how our FTP server works. Now, next thing that we want to do is we want to go ahead and make sure that the port for the FTP server is in fact open. And again, we've got a couple of IP addresses we can use. We're just going to go ahead and use the local loopback adapter for this particular example. And then the idea here is that I'm going to attempt to connect to this local loopback adapter using our FTP client. Now, to do that, we simply type in our FTP command, and we put in the address that we wish to connect to. And if you have not yet installed the FTP client, you'll be asked to install it. You may end up skipping this step depending on which features you selected in your installer, or if you've already installed your FTP client. But at this point, that I simply want to go ahead and install the FTP client. Do we want to proceed with these changes? The answer is yes. And provided that we don't have any problems with this particular package, then we should get success. However, we have a login failed here because we have not yet provided a username and a password. So simply rerun our FTP command one more time against the 127.0.0.1, and you'll see that we are prompted for a username and password. Now, to begin with, what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to go ahead and use the account that I've already created. In another video, I'm going to go through and create a separate account for FTP. We sort of want to appreciate how this is going to work. For the password, then simply enter your password in for the account that you've been using so far. And you can see here that we are in fact successfully logged on. Now, to understand where we were logged on to, you could simply run the ls-l command, and you'll see that I'm essentially dropped into the same folder that I would otherwise be if we logged in, or rather used the file manager. And you can see here that this is the same. This is the base directory. The difference, however, is that we are now logged in not as if we're using the terminal, but rather we are using the file transfer protocol server. So this is by default then where it's going to drop us in. And the other thing to note here is that I can also cd around. And again here, if I do an ls-l, if I cd back, then you'll see that it failed to open the directory. In other words, basically, you are going to be restricted by default. And I'm going to show you real quick where we were attempting to CD to. You're going to be restricted by default to stay within your home folder. And again, we're going to make some configuration changes in later videos that will help with this. For right now, all we want to do in this particular video is we want to focus on the ability to actually connect using our FTP client to our FTP server, which currently is on the same machine. And so the other thing that we want to do is we're going to exit out of our FTP client. We're going to want to check not the local loopback adapter address, but instead are 192.168.2.97. And in case you're not familiar with that IP address, that's the IP address of this particular server. If you've forgotten what yours is, you can simply run the ifconfig command. And again, what we want to do is just simply check to make sure that we are in fact able to log on. And again, you can see here running ls-l that we do in fact see the same directory structure that we saw earlier. Additionally, you can go ahead and type in the help command, and you could see some additional commands that can be useful when using your FTP client, as well as, for instance, you could do something like bang and then dir, and then this will see a listing of the local directories. Again, because we are logged on from our client to our server on the same machine with an account that we've already used, some of this is probably not going to completely make sense yet. Effectively, all we're doing is just making sure that our FTP server is, in fact, running correctly. At this point, you can simply just exit out. And then in a later video, what we're going to do is we're going to set up an account. We're also going to make some modifications in the configuration file to further restrict the user's access to the file system, as well as restrict who can, in fact, log into our FTP server. So as always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, don't hesitate to reach out to me. And thank you for watching.